He's my senior. He's been my roommate, a spin twin. And I share the same space with him in the com box nowadays. But above all, he's been a fabulous leg spinner for India. Laxman Sivaramakrishnan is my guest. LS to all, Leslie to me. Leslie Pa, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Kartik. It's indeed wonderful for you to have these shows about spin bowling because a lot of people don't take it very seriously. I mean, even in the Indian team, they don't have a specialist spin coach. I think England is the only team that has a specialist spin coach. So what you're doing is really good.
And one of the reasons I've called this chat the Spin Talks, because spin talks, we are talking about spin, and also spin makes the ball talk. So that was the reason behind this coinage. So I'm pretty sure that possibly down the line we will see you as the spin bowling coach India is looking for.
Let's hope so. Hopefully, because the batsmen say, let the bat do the talking. So as spinners, we'll have to say we make the ball talk. And that's how we flight the ball and get the ball to dip in the air, do various tricks. So ball does all the talking and taking wickets for you.
Look, you've already got me going. That is exactly what I wanted to do. And look, I've shared some wonderful times with you. And as I said, you've been my senior. I played with you at India Simmons, bowling at the other end. It was fabulous. Practicing with you in the net, again, was wonderful. Sharing the room with you, talking spin was brilliant. But we couldn't record it at that point of time because there were no mobile devices. There was nothing at all. So I'm glad that I've got this opportunity to do it. LS, for everyone, people know that you've been such a fabulous spinner, but how did it start? Where did that journey start for you? Because everything was early. At 15, you were already playing for India under-19 with Ravi Shastri. The next year, you had already made your Ranji debut in the quarterfinals, taking 7 wickets against a strong opposition. And soon, you were on the flight to Pakistan, although you didn't get to play there. So everything was like a jettison for you. Everything was quick. So how did it all start? Where was it the origin for LS's spin life?
In my family, I was the youngest son. So I was the slave. I had to bowl to all of my brothers. And even around the neighborhood, I hardly got a chance to bat, even if it was tennis ball cricket. So I was the slave, like I mentioned. I had to do all the bowling. And with tennis ball, it's much easier to bowl leg spin than off spin. I was around 12 at that point of time, Kartik. And I used to, I mean, as a little kid and who was tossing the ball up, people would come down and try and give it a whack. But a lot of people got out in the bargain. But that's how I managed to get to spin the ball, because spinning the tennis ball is so much more difficult. And then at the age of 13, I joined a club called Grand Prix Cricket Club, and I started playing with the cricket ball. And subsequently, I mean, around the same time, I started playing for my school as well. And at that point of time, the BCCI came up with the tournament for the under-15s. And the inaugural year of the under-15s, I was around 14, I think, at that point of time. I made it to the city team. Like, you know, in Chennai, you have city versus districts, and then you have the state team. And I had good performances with both the bat and the ball. Why I'm mentioning this is we'll get back a little later on the batting part of it. So I had good performances with the bat and the ball and made it to the South Zone under-15 side. And that particular interzonal tournament was played in Mumbai. And you know, in Mumbai, any cricket, all these former cricketers come and watch. So correct. At that point of time, there was Maninder Singh playing there, Chetan Sharma playing there. So it was a good contest. In fact, South Zone versus North Zone finals. So at that point in time, some of the former Mumbai cricketers would come to watch, were very impressed with me, and that made my road a little easier.
It's interesting you mentioned the tennis ball, and I've always found, you're absolutely right, tennis ball is one of the toughest balls for a spinner to control, to get the length right, and then secondly, to spin the ball, but because there's nothing in it. So that must have been interesting for you to bowl leg spin, get the ball to spin as well. But who was your coach? Because everybody needs some sort of a basic training, or were you self-taught?
Basically, I did what came to me naturally. But once I was in the Tamil Nadu under-15 team, there was a gentleman called Mr. M.R. Baig from Hyderabad, who would come once a year or twice a year for our camps. and he was the guiding force behind what I was doing at that point in time. But we were too young to know. I mean, at the age of 13, 14, or 15, you don't understand the technicalities, why a coach says X, Y, Z. I mean, you're not mature enough to understand the technicalities, and at that point in time, it's very difficult to grasp what you need. The basics are so important, and at that age, I think the basics should be taught in a very simple manner where people can understand what an alignment is, what going over the perpendicular is, and everything. It should be made very, very simple, which I think today's cricketers are very, very fortunate in having a lot of technology and having various coaches for each department. So they give them the feedbacks and they're able to do everything. But in our time, there would be a coach that comes in for a month in a year and tell you what to do and just go back. Otherwise, it was only the administrative manager that was touring with us. In my part, I think I did what came to me naturally, and that's what I ended up doing. Basically, Kartik, I had a good action, so everything came pretty well.
Yeah, I think that was something which was very natural to you. And it's again a very interesting thing which is happening. And I'm not degrading or deriding anybody here. It's interesting that the former players, and you know that spin has been rich in India. Every first class team had some fabulous spinners. India has been littered and blessed with great spinners. And in spite of that, it's interesting to know that there was nobody who helped you on a regular basis and only came. And that too, in spite of having been born in Tamil Nadu, which has a few spinners as well, you had to wait for somebody from Hyderabad to come, and that too thrice a year.
See, what I played a lot under Venkatraghavan, and Venkatraghavan was tactically very, very good, setting a field, asking you where to bowl. But it's the technicalities that I'm talking about, Kartik. I mean, at one point in time when I was not bowling well, I tried various things with my leg going across. The alignment wasn't good. Where your hand has to come, how you gather the ball, how you get into your delivery stride, how you balance yourself in the delivery stride, and what is the point of release? What does your non-bowling arm do? I mean, at our age, and when we were playing cricket, nobody taught us the importance of a non-bowling arm. And non-bowling arm plays a significant part, like you would know, in the usage of the upper body.
Yeah, again, that is something which I'm going to get to. Was the grip also very natural to you? And I've got a ball. I know you don't have a ball. Is there any way you can tell me how a leg spinner should grip the ball? I'm holding it in my right hand, although I'm a left-hander. Is that right, what I'm holding? Or is it individual to everyone?
Well, ideally, you want more gap between the middle finger and the ring finger. The index finger and the middle finger, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The ring finger is the spinning finger, so you need a little bit of thumb on the ball for support. Thumb on the ball for support, but it's the ring finger that's the spinning finger. And the bigger the gap between the middle finger and the ring finger will allow you to spin the ball even more. And once you release the ball with the seam in the direction of slip or gully, there's a lot of side spin involved. And the position of the wrist is so very important. You find a lot of leg spinners these days with the wrist in this position. That is more overspinning the ball. You find the wrist in this position, then you're side spinning the ball. So the wrist position is very important, as well as the seam position is so very important, and you impart a lot of turn. But with a lot of T20 cricket and white ball cricket being played these days, I think a lot more emphasis is given on accuracy, on line and length, more than vicious turn.
Yeah, again, there are quite a few parts which I want to touch upon since you mentioned that. See, you were beautiful to watch. And I say this, I don't have to say this, everyone has said it. In fact, I still remember Bishan Bedi always used to say that Laxman Sivaramakrishnan. I think after Subhash Gupta, if one leg spinner was spoken very highly was you. And he's always rated you higher than Shane Warne. He always used to say that if LS had played the amount of cricket which anyone else had done, nobody would have remembered Shane Warne. And that is Bishan Bedi's words, not my words. For somebody like you, you spoke about the perpendicular, you spoke about what a leg spinner generally they say that has to be slightly round arm. You were not exactly round arm. You were all ramrod straight, but in spite of that, you got the ball to drift. You got the ball to spin viciously both ways. How did you manage that? Because people who are beyond the perpendicular, as you said, their hand tends to go like that, and then it starts sliding in rather than spinning away.
See, the back of the palm, if it's facing, let's say, if it's in the direction of the offside, back of the palm. Then you end up just overspinning the ball, not side spinning it. So the wrist position was the key to me. And you would know as well, Kartik, higher the arm, higher the release, more the bounce. So if your
Okay.
wrist position is correct, and if you have a high arm release, then you will get turn and bounce. The one factor I find that when you go round arm a little bit, for you to bowl the googly, it becomes more of a telegraph or a telegram.
Yeah.
People see it
Okay.
automatically. But when you're bowling it closer to the thing, you can change it at the last moment. You see a Piyush Chawla, he's got a close past the perpendicular, I think, action with his right arm, but you find him bowling very effective googly. So when you're high arm action, you can just change your wrist position at the last moment and disguise your googlies and top spinners. And also the wrist position only changes, not the hand position. Higher the arm, higher the release, higher the trajectory, more the bounce.
Okay, you gave an example of Piyush Chawla, and there are quite a few examples. Mushi was again beyond the perpendicular, so he had a more effective googly than something which spun. Two classic Australian examples. The greatest of them all, as they say, Shane Warne and Stuart McGill were both round arm. So they didn't bowl googlies, but they bowled vicious leg breaks because does the hand have to be something like this rather than like that for a leg spinner for you to get that side spin? So I'm wondering that if somebody is so high up, how can they get the arm to do that, which you did? That is why I'm surprised that in spite of having a high arm action, you did both very comfortably and very easily.
I had a chat with Shane Warne. Shane Warne said at the beginning of his career, his arm was in a good position very close to the ear. But then he developed a shoulder problem, which is one of the reasons that he had to go round arm, a little bit round arm. And people simply followed what Shane Warne did. But what Shane Warne really did was develop a flipper because he could bowl the googly. With his arm position away from the head, if you could bowl a googly, it would be easily seen by the batsman because the back of the palm is so visible to the batsman that he can easily spot it. So what was smart about Shane was bowling, he would bowl those big leg breaks, set them up nicely, and a lot of wickets with his flippers, which were simply magnificent. And same as the case with Anil Kumble. Anil Kumble had a high arm action and he was bowling straight, but he did bowl a fantastic flipper stump to stump, and that's how he got his wicket. So if you want to compare Shane Warne and Anil Kumble, Shane Warne's arm was in a different position, Anil Kumble's arm was in a different position, but both got a lot of wickets, setting up the batsmen and got them with flippers.
Yeah, again, you look at these fascinating spinners and fabulous spinners, and they all have their own tricks to their trade. But technique is such a crucial thing, and which we always tend to discuss. Because yes, there are possibly somebody like you or so many other bowlers who develop on their own. But as you have also mentioned before, there were times when you have a few issues. What do you fall back upon? Who do you fall back upon? So technique becomes your go-to person there, or the basics, or as they say, go to basics becomes the most important thing. How would you define a leg spinner's technique over here? What are the key things which a leg spinner should know to become a better leg spinner?
See, when we talk on commentary about spin bowling in general, and if I spoke about leg spin bowling, a lot of people on social media go and said, what has he done? But the one thing that people must remember, this is a point I really want to make, because the spinners that played just before me and Maninda were Prasanna, Chandrasekhar, Bedi, and Venkatragun. All right, Prasanna and Bedi can even today bowl brilliantly. But the biomechanics of bowling, the technique of bowling has to be explained. Venkatragun was different. Venkatragun was a line and length bowler, and Chandra was the leg spinner. If I had to look upon somebody, it was Chandra that I had to look upon. And we all know Chandrasekhar was a very shy person, would hardly talk anything. And V.V. Kumar from Tamil Nadu was another leg spinner. Yeah. But V.V. Kumar also could bowl like Bishan and Prasanna. He could bowl and show you, but he could not explain the intricacies or how to do it. It's so important to tell a person how to do it, not exhibit and just show that this is the way, this is how it's done. But tell them what are the requirements. What are the requirements that you need to do, the right from the grip to the run up to the delivery strike to the point of release, your finish and follow through. That a lot of spinners have forgotten these days, the finish and the follow through. you see a lot of spinners just stand still after they release the ball. So right from the start of the run-up till you finish your follow-through, it's all got to be in a smooth motion and very, very balanced. And these are the things that are called basics. And these basics have to be ingrained at the start of a career and encourage spinners who are just starting to flight the ball. Because you get along with fantastic batting pitches these days. So if you have to deceive the batsmen, you've got to deceive them in the air unless you're playing test match cricket and get turning tracks. So I think basics have to be ingrained. And unfortunately, in our times, there was nobody to tell us what the right basics were. If you did practice the wrong things and that became a habit and you were going to do awfully because you practiced the wrong technique. So the basics are very important, and the way it is taught and the right way it's ingrained in the spinners is very, very important.
You mentioned two names. One of your contemporary, again, one of the greatest left-arm spinners I have seen. Maninder Singh was possibly the same age as you and played together as well. LS, there's some key commonalities over there. Again, both of you were freaks of nature at that point of time because you're so supremely talented. Played very early, played very, very early. But also, are there any lessons which you will give to the listeners or to the young players? Because there is again a school of thought that spinners mature late. So you should only get them in much later. Whereas there is the other school of thought which says they're good, they should come in. But what is your theory there? Because Manibia has always felt that he should have bowled more and he should have played a few seasons of first-class cricket before coming in. You played, I think, what, 3 games before you made it into the Indian team?
Yeah.
So where do you sit on that?
I played 1 Ranji, 1 Duleep, and 1 Irani Cup, and I got picked for India. I think I'm with Maninder on that. One more season of good guidance from senior cricketers and playing at the domestic level gives you a lot more confidence and self-belief. You play 3 first-class games, straight away you're on a tour to Pakistan. Even if it's in the side game, you're bowling to a Javed Mian or the Rasair Abbas. It is very, very difficult. I mean, nobody can teach you in a match situation. And at that point of time, the administrative manager would give you the keys. There was no coach. So who looks after you in the nets? And after the famous 4 came in Maninder and Sivaramakrishnan. So a lot of expectations. And we were 16, 17 at that point in time. We got into the Indian team. And you're not even mature as a person, leave alone as a cricketer. You're not even mature as a person. So you need constant guidance. You need constant reinforcement of self-belief to teach you.
No, I completely agree with you because I feel as a spinner, you learn so many things by getting hit. Once you get hit, the survival instinct kicks in. Playing first-class cricket, you see the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of your own game. There are days when you don't get wickets, you have to bowl long spells, and you come back a stronger person. And I think that's why both of you feel that you could be supremely talented, supremely gifted, but it's the mind which plays tricks at the end of the day. It's not the skill which plays tricks, but it's the mind which plays tricks, and that's why you need to have more games under your belt.
Yeah, when you talk about the mind, you've got to be mentally strong, like you mentioned, in terms of, I mean, you get hit for a couple of boundaries. That's why you need a good captain as well. But when you say mentally, I would also bring in the factor that you plan a batsman out. You set up a batsman and try to get him out. So when you're 16 and 17, you don't know all these things. You don't know all these things. How to set up a batsman or how do you go about the job, especially when you play level. So if you played at the domestic levels, for instance, if I played under Venkatraghavan for 1 or 2 seasons more, he would have taught me a lot more tactically. And I would have understood the art of taking wickets, the art of bowling tight when required. And at that point of time, the first-class players were great players of spin bowling.
Yeah.
I would not say the same thing now. But today, a good spinner gets wickets in India. Nathan Lyon comes, he gets wickets, a good spinner. Sean Udall has got wickets in India. So you can imagine, because of the quality of spinners have gone down, our batsmen are unable to play good quality spinners. So at that point of time, you had really good batsmen at the domestic level. You talk about Ashok Mankad, Parthasar Sharma, or a Brijesh Patel, a Gundappa Vishwanath, and Test cricketers used to play domestic cricket at that point of time. So it was very, very difficult to bowl to them. And if Maninder and me had played a season or two more of domestic cricket, we would have learned more about the tricks of the trade and also been a lot more mature.
Yeah, again, we'll come back to this is the mental side of it. It is so, so important. Sometimes people talk about skill, and skill is there. Skill you need to perform a certain act and to bowl well. But at the end of the day, it's the mind which plays a lot, isn't it? So if you're mentally very strong, you overcome a few technical glitches. But if you're mentally weak, you can have the maximum amount of skill, but then you can go wrong. Is what is my personal opinion. Again, when it comes to fast bowlers, they say, okay, blood them in. Doesn't the same thing hold true for them as well? Because they've not bowled too many seasons. They also don't know how to plan a batsman out. All they have is possibly pace or some skill, but they don't say for fast bowlers. But for spinners, always they say spinners mature late. Spinners should be blooded in after a while. It's an interesting theory, or it's an interesting comparison between the fast bowlers and the spinners.
If you look at Indian cricket and the fast bowling aspect of it, it was only after Kapil Dev came in that people took up fast bowling. Before that, Gavaskars opened the bowling, they would roll the ball around and the spinners would come in the fourth or fifth over. A lot of emphasis, say in the 70s and mostly 70s, was the spinners doing the bulk of the bowling and somebody filling in with the new ball. But after Kapil Dev came in, we saw the likes of Srinath come in, then Zahir Khan. A lot of people came in only after Kapil Dev had a lot of success at the highest level. But by which time, technology was slowly creeping in. There were coaches that were being nominated. They were coming into the system, and slowly these people playing in the 90s had Ajit Wadekar as their coach, and pitches were prepared to our advantage, and rightfully so. But they got a lot of encouragement, a lot of guidance, and a lot of technical inputs started to come in at that point of time. So people realized what they had to do in order to bowl a good ball. And it's not about bowling one good ball once in a while. It's about a spell. I very often mention to you, and we sit together in the commentary box, a good spell will get you a wicket, because a sequence of good overs creates pressure, and that pressure will result in the batsman making a mistake and getting out.
Yeah. Coming back to your own bowling, LS now, we spoke about your action, how smooth it was, how beautiful it was. What were the things which worked for you? Obviously, you were very skinny, and you still are very skinny. Do you think that is something which a spinner needs? What about the fingers? Is there any specific length of the fingers? Because for finger spinners, they say bigger fingers help you spin the ball and get a lot more rotations. You had everything. That's what I'm saying. You had the ball to drop, you got the ball to drift, you got to spin the ball both ways. Your lead arm was in control. So what were the key components which worked for you and which you teach a young spinner now?
Well, basically, I like to believe a side-on bowler would be far more effective because he can use his entire body. A side-on bowler will have a pivot, which means he's got a hip drive. And hip drive is so essential in transfer of body weight from the back leg into the front leg into the ball. So the hip drive generates more body. You find even like somebody like an Ashwin, he's a very fine bowler, has had a lot of success, he's been fantastic. But if you look at the technique, Ashwin has the tendency to stop immediately after releasing the ball, which means he doesn't have that hip drive. Without the hip drive, he's got so many wickets. I wonder if he does develop the hip drive, even now, he will be a lot more successful. I think transfer of body weight, the pivot, and the point of release. The non-bowling arm, I personally believe, gives you direction. Where in which you take, I think if you take your non-bowling arm towards the wicket keeper, then your line is always just outside off stump. Non-bowling arm gives you direction, and the point of release gives you the length. And the length will vary depending on the pitch, the pace of the pitch. If it's a 5-day game, day 1 and day 5, it's totally different in India because day 5, the pitch gets a lot slower, so you go to bowl a lot slower. What a spinner needs to do is make sure the batsman is playing on the front foot. If the batsman is playing off the back foot, then you're not bowling the right leg. So I think basically a side-on bowler will use a lot more body, hence get more out of the pitch, and will be able to flight the ball, will be able to get the ball to dip. And a couple of things you need to notice, I'm sure you would have done that in your career, is the pivot mark when you release the ball, where your front foot lands. If you have a good pivot where the mark is circular, and if you have a follow through, which is about 3-4 yards, it doesn't need to have, we have a big follow through. The follow through is an occurrence because of the transfer of weight from the back leg into the front leg into the ball. If you don't transfer weight, you're not going to have follow through. So if you use your body, you will have an automatic follow through, and that is so very important. Unless you have a follow through and finish your delivery, the ball's not going to dip for the batsman.
A great point you make there, because for me, my telltale signs were always how I land, where your back leg lands, whether it's parallel to the back crease, and also whether my front leg is landing pointing towards the first leg. See, Bishan Paji always used to say that it should always be a heel-toe landing, even for a spinner, just like a fast bowler. But for me, it was not that. I couldn't get that, but it was a flat landing. And just, I think, a millimeter raise from the ground, where I used to pivot till possibly the leg stump or slightly more. And for me, the next step was very important. I think that told me a lot, because I used to follow through a lot and I used to go a lot. My next step should be in the same line as my lead step, which is my left leg should be in the same line as my right leg. If I go two in, which means that my body is opening out. If I'm going out, means that I've not finished it properly. So it was such a huge telltale mark. All those spike marks used to tell me a lot. So again, that, I don't know whether you agree with it, but for me, that was a crucial thing, that my follow-up leg after my pivot, which is my back leg, is in the same line as my pivot leg.
The reason why, I think you made a very, very good point there, because if your second step after the second step that you're talking about is in the same direction as the first step, they follow the straight line, then your hip drive is going towards the batsman. The hip drive is going towards the batsman. All your body force, all your energy is in the direction of the target. That's what you want. If you're pivoting a lot and your front leg goes towards the leg side, then your energy is going towards fine leg, but you're trying to bowl towards the batsman. So if everything is in a straight line, from the delivery stride, first landing stride, and then the follow through, everything is in the direction, all your energy and all your force that you generate and impart spin is in the direction where you want to bowl. It's not going here and there. So you'll obviously have a lot more consistency, less tired, even if you bowl a long spin, if you're rhythmic. So I think the second step is very, very important, like you mentioned. It's got to be not on the danger area, but 1 foot outside the middle stump from where the stumps are marked, which is the danger zone.
Unless you mentioned the hip drive. Can you explain it a bit more? Because there are different types of hip drive. Yours was very follow your lead leg sort of a thing. Whereas for me and Maninder Singh, it was, we used to turn around. It was like this. We used to, our leg didn't go as in towards the ball or towards the batsman, but we used to turn on it. So which are the types of hip drives you approve of?
Well, probably you pivoted a little too early. That's why your body tends to turn.
Okay.
But if you pivot along with the release of the ball, and then it goes through, your bowling, like I mentioned, your back leg and your bowling arm synchronize together and come together. And as you release the ball, you'll find that your hip drive goes first and the pivot comes just a split second thereafter. That's when you make sure the hip drive goes towards the target, and then the pivot takes you away from the danger area. So I think you and Maninder might have done it fractionally earlier because you went sidewards. But if you do it synchronized and at the right timing, then the second step after the delivery stride, you will go straight, and then because of the pivot, you will go away from the danger area.
Okay, interesting. Because for me, although Bishan Paji always used to see us, for us, the point was that at the time, if this is my right leg, at the point of release, my back leg was always like this. I never wanted it away because then the body tends to tilt. They were always braced together. But for us, we used to turn like this. For you, it went through like that. For us, this leg used to turn here at the point of release is what I meant. Drift Next is
one
another.
quick thing, Kartik. One quick thing there. You mentioned, I was talking about pivoting early and pivoting marginally later. But the point you made about Bishan and you spoke about yourself, where the heel toe took a little bit of a fraction of a second. Whereas if you land straight on your toe, then you're about to deliver the ball. You're ready to release the ball.
Yeah.
The heel toe, Venkatraman also suggests the same thing. The heel toe thing gives you a fraction of a second. So your bowling hand can synchronize with the hip drive and then go through.
Okay, interesting. And also, look, it's a very different school of bowling, isn't it? LS, you must have noticed it when they say old school off spinner, old school leg spinner. All the actions are different now. It's all possibly a byproduct of the times. All of them had a beautiful leap. And by leap, I still remember Bishan Paji always used to say that your leg should leap, should cross over like this, not the other way around, which means that the left leg doesn't come in front, but the right leg comes in front of the left leg when you leap. And that is why he was in such a beautiful position to bowl. I still remember, I'm trying to think of Erapalli Prasanna's bowling as well. He didn't have a huge leap, but he was a short man, a different action. What about the leap for you? You also had a very nice load up leap.
Kartik, it is all about the rock back. When you have a little bit of a leap or a small jump, you have a little bit of a rock back. And modern day spinners, I don't know what happened. About a few years ago, they were told not to rock back because it will cause a back injury. You see fast bowlers, you see a Jeff Thompson and a Dennis Lilly, their rock back was big, really big. That's why they were able to generate that slingy kind of pace and they were quick enough. We used to have a natural rock back wherein you rock back and then let it go. It's like a catapult. The more you wind back, more force it generates and then you leave it. Modern day spinners don't have the rock back because they've been told it's not good for them. I don't agree with that. I think they should rock back to have more effectiveness while bowling, and they'll be like springs. I mean, unless you do it, your body will not get used to the movement. All of a sudden, you come and do it, you'll feel stiff backs. You've got to train for it. I think the rock back is gone out of the window, which is why you'll find spinners depending more on the pitch than their own skill sets.
Yeah, 100%. When you think, and sometimes when you are bowling spin and you learn from all these greats and watching you guys, you don't realize why things happen. But when it was naturally happening for you, you didn't realize it. So when you rock back, it also allows you to come so much through with your action and finish it. And that's where I feel the drop also happens on the ball, because you rock back and then it comes, your action comes, and you said you can vary your releases according to how good your action is. I think, don't you feel that it also helps in that big dip and big drop which all these bowlers used to get?
Absolutely. Rock back allows you to use a lot more body, and when you spin the ball, they normally say, Bishan Paji says, higher the trajectory, more the spin. Higher the trajectory, more the spin, because when you impart more spin, that's when the ball will dip on the batsman. And the rock back will give you that extra force to be able to give it a bigger tweak than just release the ball. Because of wide ball cricket, people are just releasing the ball, they're not spinning it enough. Even if they flight the ball, they just let it go and they get hit for sixes. That's why they're apprehensive about flighting the ball. I mean, a Prasanna or a Bishan Bedi, or you see some of the great spinners would have any batsman stumped. They're very happy with the batsman leaving the crease because the batsman might think it's an overpitched ball. Because they've used their body and spun the ball a lot more, the ball will be a good leg ball instead of an overpitched ball, and they knock to the pitch of the ball and they get out stumped. So they're magicians because they use their craft, they use science, they use their body, they used their brains to get wickets to set up batsmen.
You spoke about the leading arm, and leading arm has always been a huge factor growing up. The leading arm which you mentioned, is that for a leg spinner or for the other finger spinner? And again, for me, you said it's more for direction. Did you feel that the quicker or the slower it went allowed your other shoulder to come accordingly? Because I was always told that leading arm should be going down slowly and your bowling arm is quicker, and that's where you always create the illusion.
Well, the leading arm, I first realized the leading arm is so important when the camp at MRF Pace Foundation took place, and Dennis Lilly was telling the fast bowlers the importance of the leading arm. And I happened to go to the nets a few times. And then I said, it's not only for the fast bowlers, it's also for the spinners. Because once you do this, then you're using your upper body. You're pulling the force, and this comes in slowly, and this comes in fast. So then your point of release, the point of release is so important because that's when you tweak the ball. So the point of release will be much better when your front arm and back arm synchronize in a certain manner that allows you to give the ball a bigger tweak. So like I mentioned, it's imperative to have the right synchronization. Even a small mistake here and there, if you release the ball early, it's going to be a over-pitched or a full toss. If you release it late, it's going to be a short ball. So the point of release is very, very important for good leg.
Since we're on the topic of points of release, Ellis, what were your different points of release? Or where would you say, like many spinners feel that around 1 o'clock, that is in front of your head is the ideal place to, because you're completely finished and you get more revolutions there. What is it for you and what is it for a leg spinner?
Well, first of all, before answering this question, let me tell you, when I played cricket at a very, very young age, I played my first test when I was 17. I played my last test match when I was 21. So I was hardly aware of the fact of the non-bowling arm and the point of release. But after having done commentary for 20 years, then you look at the intricacies of spin bowling, you look at the various replay, you ask the director to freeze at certain points. So I think a length for a batsman is get him on the front foot and hit him high on the back. That particular spot is your good leg. And it varies depending on the pace of the pitch and the height of the batsman. I mean, a lot of people find it, spinners find it very difficult to bowl to a shorter batsman because he can cut a good length ball because he doesn't have the reach. Whereas to a taller batsman, you can be marginally short of a length, still you know he's going to play on the front foot because of his height and his reach. So I think two factors come into play, the height of the batsman and the pace of the pitch. But the one important thing is get the batsman on the front foot, hit him high on the bat, then you know you're bowling perfect length on any pitch.
Yeah, I was also asking you about the release point for you as a bowler. What was the ideal release point for you? Because few spinners I've spoken to, all of them felt that slightly ahead of your face or close to your nose is where you release, around 1 o'clock. What was it for you and what will it be for leg spinners or ideal for leg spinners?
Around the same, around between 12 and 1 o'clock would be the ideal because the highest point of release, like I mentioned earlier, gives you more bounce. Even on pitches where the ball's not turning, you get bounce. You're encouraged to bowl a good leg wherein you might hit the top of the bat. So I would think anywhere between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock is the ideal point of release for any bowler.
But have you ever bowled spells where you've also released from slightly behind? Have you also done that?
Yes, when you use the crease, usage of crease, that's something that we can speak about as well. When you bowl from behind, suppose you find a batsman stepping out and playing you, then you don't want to change your point of release. You bowl from behind. That's when you want to release the ball a little earlier because you have to make up for that 1 yard more. So you had various points of release depending on what the batsman was doing. If the batsman was quite content to defend, then we had three fielders around the bat at that point in time. We were encouraged to bowl for wickets. We were encouraged to bowl good balls, which means there was no deep point, there was no deep mid wicket, there was no long on, long off. If people hit you over the top, it's fine. You were always told to bowl good balls. A Bishan Bedi or a Venkatraghavan, if you bowl a bad ball, he won't give you a feel for a bad ball. He'll take you off the attack and get somebody else on. So we were in a position, when we played, we were in a position where we had three men around the bat plus the keeper, which means you had only 5 fielders on the outfield. And you had to be precise with your line and length. And even if you went for runs of a drive, I don't think Bishan and Venkatraghavan would mind. If they drove the ball in front of the square, then you're fine. If you're cut and or being pulled, that's something they didn't like. So when you have fielders around the bat, your consistency is so important.
At the beginning of the conversation, you made a great point about the amount of drop which makes the batsman feel for it. So another part of it is also the drift, which goes hand in hand. If you have the drift and the drop along with the turn, it's, I think, the deadliest combination which a spinner can have. And again, very concepts and theories about drift, where the wind is blowing from, you should be bowling, which helps your drift. Many people feel that it's only the revolutions or the rotations on the ball. There are also people who feel that there are ways to finish. So the way you finish allows the drift to go which way. And what is your theory, or what is your feeling about all these things? Or is it a combination of all three?
I think it's a combination of all three. I think the wind direction is important, so important to bowl from the right end. So as an off spinner, you want the ball to be curving away from the right hand and then turning in. For a leg spinner, I want the ball to be like Shane Warne had brilliant drift. Shane Warne's ball to Mike Gatting. Gatting played the drift, he didn't play the turn.
Yeah.
Once the ball starts drifting in the air, you don't know what line to pick because the ball is still traveling in the air in a direction that the batsman is not used to. So he can't pick your line. Once you get the ball to drift, it's very, very difficult for the batsman to pick the line. And if you get the ball to deviate after pitching, that makes it even more deadly. I think that perfect example would be Shane Warne's delivery to Mike Gatting, where he was playing outside leg stump and off stump went out.
Oh, I think you have not seen my delivery to Misbah-ul Haq when LS at Kanpur. The same thing happened. Played out. No, I'm just kidding. It did happen. It did happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, mine to Javed Miandad as well, World Championship.
Oh, yeah, of course. No, you had a beautiful drift. I still can't. I see, it's always been fascinating because even Bishan Paji always used to say that the leg spinner needs to be slightly round arm. That's where he gets that palm to face the sky and then get the ball to spin. Whereas you were like straight. You were straight. So you look at Mushi, Piyush and Anil Bhai, they were all straight, but they didn't get the ball to spin, whereas you got the ball to spin. So possibly your wrist was in great position is always been something which I've thought about.
Yeah, I think the wrist position is far more important than the hand position. And once you spin the ball and spin it viciously, when the ball's spinning in the air, and if there is any breeze or across the ground, then there is resistance. Once you spin the ball spinning in the air, there is resistance which makes the ball go the other way. Maybe you can use the technique like reverse swing, the ball going towards the shiny side. So hold the ball in such a way where the shiny side is the direction you want the ball to drift. And all these things can be done in practice. All these things can be done in a simulated match situation. And people can master the art of spin. Again, that's why they say spinners mature at the age of 27, 28, because they have enough experience and enough knowledge. Knowledge is so important. Knowledge not only to know how to bowl what, when to bowl what is also important. You set up a batsman and you know exactly what is your wicket taking delivery and you slip it in when the batsman is nicely set up.
Yeah, so for drift, would you say that you kept the shiny bit outside or shiny bit in your palm?
I did. No, I kept the
shiny bit outside.
Outside, yeah. I always held with the rough side on the inside because I found it far more easier to grip the ball nicely. Because once you get the ball to grip nicely, then you can spin it a lot.
And I completely agree with you because for us, I was always taught that the shiny portion has to be out. Manibhaiya did the same. LS, everybody who wants to be a spinner wants to spin the ball big, but certain people aren't able to do it. So when we say you need to spin the ball big, we need to spin the ball big, it's an easy thing to say, but how do we help those bowlers to spin the ball big? So where does that come from? How does one develop?
Yeah, I think one thing you and me agree on commentary is that we must correct one thing which people think. A lot of even foreign commentators who are big experts say the pitch will spin. Pitch will not spin. The ball will turn off the pitch.